Hello and welcome to Sustainable Kashi's free permaculture class. We're very proud to host these classes and be able to help all of us connect with our ecosystem and each other, especially in this time of COVID. Sustainable Kashi is located in Sebastian, Florida, on an 80-acre retreat on the beautiful St. Sebastian River. We have 9 demonstration gardens with lots of different growing styles. We have an off-grid eco-village with regenerative systems that you can get your hands on and really learn how to use the systems. We invite you all to come for a visit once we reopen after this COVID crisis. Let's go ahead and start with our interactions section of the call. So we're all going to be talking. And I basically want to just ask everybody, what do you think resiliency is?
Hi. Resiliency is the ability to bounce back from something.
And then, of course, why is it important?
So you can bounce back. So get back, to get back on track.
Excellent. Excellent. Anyone else have an example or a definition for resiliency?
I just saw something that said bounce forward. Come to the place where you're doing something better than you had been doing in the past.
I like that. I like that. So it's not just a matter of holding your ground, but actually advancing. And that's super important. Today we are talking about resiliency, and it's so important. As we said, it's not only about bouncing back, but bouncing forward. I love that analogy. It's fantastic. And I'm so excited for this week's topic because I'm fascinated by resiliency. When we add diversity to a system, we increase the resiliency. The more diverse the system is, the more it's able to handle unknown factors. This works with social, economic, and agricultural systems. So it's an honor to have Koreen Brennan with us today, who is a pioneer in permaculture. When I first started playing in the field of permaculture here in Florida, there were very few names on the playing field, and Koreen's kept coming up, and it was just so, her work in Haiti has been an inspiration. She's a friend, a colleague, and I'm very excited to introduce her here to share her experiences on becoming deeply resilient in this time of COVID. Thank you, Koreen, so much for being here.
Hey, hi everybody. And I got the time wrong, so I'm glad that I saw your message at the last minute. Yes, well, we've been having a lot going on lately. Welcome everybody. Yes, there's been a lot going on in the world, and it's really good to sit back and use our permaculture design mind and think about, you know, how can we respond to this activity in the most regenerative way possible? And the answer has always been to form deeper community, but now that's more important than ever. It's becoming imperative. It's not a nice to do anymore. It's not, you know, I've always loved creating community because it's just very pleasurable. It's a much nicer way to live when you have people around you who are truly supportive and you're working on the same page in a lot of ways and helping each other to accomplish these really beautiful goals that we're working on. It's just a really high rate of pleasure to do things that way. And I think a lot of us have gone to a certain degree with that. We've gone to a certain degree, and it's worked really well. And you know, like when I came to Florida, there was almost no permaculture happening anywhere. There's almost no designers, and nobody knew what it was. It was a pioneer state. I came from California, where it wasn't. It's been around for decades and pretty established in some areas. But um, what what really was heartening about Florida is how fast this has evolved here, and it's done that through the Facebook networks that we've had, and through organizations like what Terry is doing. You know, you've always had a really strong community base. Orlando has some beautiful community things going on. Miami, uh, and Tampa, St. Pete, and but this stuff started pretty recently, just in the last decade, and has grown exponentially. And that just shows you the power of community. Uh, we've found ways to be more resilient together. There's definitely more resilience that has been established, but it's just a drop in the bucket compared to where we need to be. And that's, I'm grateful that Terry gave me the opportunity to talk about this. uh, because we really do need to up our game. And the only way we're really going to do that, historically, if you look at how movements and how any activity has become the dominant activity, or I don't even like to use that word really, um, become a viable activity on a community-wide basis, on a city-wide basis, is with organization. And for a lot of people, you know, we're enjoying the organic process of building community and just letting it happen, and watching the weeds pop up here and there, and the edible weeds, you know, um, and that's beautiful, and it's very much part of the process. Um, but as designers, we can watch a food forest spring up like that, or allow it to, because nature will put it there, or we can tweak the design and help it happen faster. And I think it's really vital that we have these deeper conversations about how we're going to do that with invisible structures, with our own relationships, and with the structure of our relationships. Because we'll work our heinies off um, building soil in Florida sand. You know, we'll carry those wheelbarrows back and forth for however many trips we need to do to build our soil. But do we do that with each other with the same intentions? And I think we do in a lot of ways, but I'm talking specifically about organizationally. Like, you know, we'll bring in the compost teas, and we'll go to the seashore and get the seaweed, and we'll go drive to the goat manure place and pick up goat manure. We'll do all this work, but do we sit down and do the work of creating organizational structure? Not so much. And I just want to talk to you about some things that other people are doing outside of the permaculture movement that I've been involved in, that's inspiring and heartening, and they have some really good ideas, and it's working. And one of those is the mutual aid networks. And how many of you guys have been involved in mutual aid? You may raise your hands, or if you know anything about it. Yeah. These are exploding right now because of COVID, and they're evolving, and that's very interesting to see. They are realizing that they need to be more organized. Again, it's just been an organic process of responding to the needs in the community, and people not being able to get food or medicine, or, you know, whatever was needed, people were responding and helping each other. And that's a beautiful thing to see. But now there's a lot more organization going into it. How can we make this into a more permanent structure? How can we ramp up the effectiveness of these networks? And we can look at history and how mutual aid networks have worked in the past very, very effectively, and very resiliently. And we could look at other forms of networking that has been happening around in different areas. And how long should I talk for? Should I leave time for questions, or Terry?
Yeah, you definitely, you have half an hour. So
Okay.
please feel free to share. You have such a breadth of experience. Thank you.
Okay. Um, so there's two things that have, well, I'll just talk about some of the things that we're doing in our area as a response to some of these mutual aid networks. And I started doing a salon every Wednesday evening in the Tampa Bay area. And there's been other people that have participated from Miami and different areas, Orlando. But we're talking about how we can increase the effectiveness of our structures, of our beneficial connection in the form of a structural design. And some of the things that we've come up with have been a food shed project, which is right now we're asset mapping our food shed, and the local food shed specifically. And we're finding the holes, and we're approaching this from, let's get these holes filled. And just putting that intention there attracted someone into the network who wasn't coming to the salons, who is going to start a food hub. And this person's on fire about it. They're moving forward. They have the qualifications. It's really this hugely missing niche for farmers in our area that would be very useful to have. And so just that site assessment on the level of where's your local food coming from, and how well is that doing, and what are the barriers, where are the blocks where the water isn't flowing correctly, and it's all jammed up and people are frustrated because they're, the plants are frustrated, they're not getting the water. And so that's one project that's ongoing. And then another thing that came up in some of these meetings, and this actually came up with a group discussion amongst a bunch of permaculture women, is the idea of a micro-lending network. And one woman in Miami didn't need her COVID check, her stimulus check. And she's like, why not set up a micro-lending network with these stimulus checks that people don't need because they still have an income? And let's make that into something that is a regenerative economy. Let's take this horrible thing that's happening and turn it into something that is long-term survival and truly regenerative. And so that's a project that's ongoing. I just saw something posted in the Sustainable Kashi community list that it's launched. There's a website now. She's running with it. We're working on replicating that same system in the Tampa area. And when we talk together like this, when we have these conversations, we can help each other ramp up these systems much faster. We can learn from each other. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We're all busy. Let's take these ideas and see how we can use our designer mind to slam dunk them in a really efficient way, so that we're really working with the natural system of human beings that we have around us, working with our capacities, not against them, working with what we have to offer, and designing around what we are and who we are, so that we can launch these projects and create more robust systems. I've been reaching into this whole concept of this mutual aid economic system recently, and finding these beautiful stories all around us. I spoke with a man who's doing a mutual aid home building in Minneapolis with the Somalia refugees. And they are, have not been welcomed very much, but they're in a lot of parts of the US, but they're thriving in Minneapolis, and very accepted by the community. And one of the reasons is because they created this beautiful mutual aid network where they're putting in 100 people will put in money into the system so that one person can build their home from scratch, pay it off. They are Muslim and they don't believe in interest, so they can't get a bank loan. Now that's interesting. That actually, that's a big, huge subject in itself, is interest payments and where that leads in an economic system. It basically creates an inflationary system where the money floats to the top, inevitably. But so anyway, they're building these houses, and then the people who live there pay back into the system, pay it forward to the next person that needs to build a house. It becomes a really self-sustaining system where people can get land access and ownership, you know, through an alternative network. And you know, this is how I purchased my farm, is using my social capital to have people invest into it. And it's a really viable model, and it's something that we really, really need to start doing, is helping each other economically to get out of, to extract ourselves from this system that is so narrow-minded that it doesn't allow a lot of us who are real stewards of the land and will take responsibility for it to get that access. So there's one example. There's some really beautiful examples of people sharing their resources in, whether that be food. In St. Pete, there's somebody that's been just going around harvesting from all the community gardens and from the fruit tree network and distributing that food to food banks. There's huge gleaning networks that have sprung up that are very successful at a national level and local levels. Many of you may have heard of the Sarasota Gleaning Project that has literally provided hundreds of thousands of pounds of food to food banks from organic farms, food that would otherwise go to waste. So, you know, if we put a little bit of organization into the process, our yield becomes exponentially greater. So it really is useful to do that. And the organizational points that are key points that just a little bit of work put into it can bring a great yield are site assessments. You know, doing a site assessment of your invisible structure resources are really good. Time banks do that to some degree. You know, this food shed project that we're doing, we have a spreadsheet which lists out all these different elements of our food shed. It's not just farmers and consumers. There's a whole lot of other things that go into creating a food shed. Who are the, you know, the nonprofit organizations that are supportive of this? Who are the community leaders in the community who are supportive of this, or need to be? What are the financial resources that we have, and who's funding this stuff? The placement of a more robust food shed, local food shed. And does everyone know what I mean by food shed? Maybe I should define that. It's just like a watershed. It's where all the water comes into an area. Well, think of all the food that goes into a Tampa Bay or an Orlando or a Miami. You know, where does that food come from? That is your food shed. And we want to make a more robust, localized food shed, because that's more resilient than getting all your food from Chile or China or wherever we get it now. And that doesn't mean we have to have all our food local. That's never going to happen. That's never happened in history. People have always like risked their lives to go trade for cinnamon or coffee or something. You know, that's not going to stop. We're going to trade for food. But how much food do we have around us, and how connected are we to our local food? In disasters and you know, depressions, that's been pretty important to have that local connection. And the other thing about local food networks is it connects you to your local community more when you know where your food comes from. There's a whole community dynamic that goes around that, where you start meeting your neighbors and meeting the people who are producing the things that you need in order to survive. Those food networks can be very powerful. We've seen that in California, where farmers markets became centers for for getting alternative energy programs out into the community, uh, economic programs out into the community, education on all kinds of issues, and community organizing, time banks, you know, all of these things can come through a farmer's market where everybody has to go because, you know, everybody eats. So food is this very common, you know, thing that we all share, and where we can meet and get into all of these other issues. So that's a really key point of ramping up resiliency, is finding these centerpieces where people have to go, where they want to go, and using those to reach out into all areas where we need resiliency. So when you're creating when you're participating in a farmer's market or a CSA farm or anything local that you're participating in, think about the ways that you could bring other energies into it. Community gardens are great places to have events, to you know, to bring people together over any number of issues. So these nodes of gathering places can be very powerful nodes to create resilience across the boards, basically. And let me look at what else I wanted to say to you guys. Yes. So you know, again, looking at what has been accomplished in other communities, we did a pretty in-depth research project a few years ago about what were the key points that really ramped up the local food movements and the healthy food movements in other cities. And it was food hubs. Food hubs were an essential part of it. And that looks different in every city, but it's a place where, again, the farmers can meet the consumers, and all this other energy can happen with education and you know, other issues being brought into that space. So, you know, a place where that can happen is really key, a physical location. And nowadays, where we're having this conversation online, the physical location may not be as important even anymore. We have this option to talk to each other without that, and to exchange goods or whatever else we're doing. But it's still a good thing to have that, a physical location, if you can have it. And so the other thing that I wanted to discuss, I'm just thinking if there's anything else about food networks. There's different elements involved in ramping up successful local food movements. One of them is to just get the laws changed so that it's legal to do what you need to do to have a local food shed. And that's you know, that takes a certain kind of person to approach that. But again, if we have a network, if we are getting together via any channel, whether it's a salon or a time bank or, you know, sustainable Kashi or whatever organization we use to get together, we can coordinate these kinds of things. Like, organizers who want to change the laws need the community to back them up. They don't need that community all the time. They need it when there's a law that's up in front of their representatives, and at that point they need everybody to go visit or write, or do something to let those representatives know that this is what the community wants. So again, having that centerpiece where you are meeting regularly for however that happens, and using it to actually really dive into discussions about resiliency, and especially using your design tools to increase your effectiveness with those discussions is key to creating this in your community. And you know, the whole subject of beneficial connection is a deep subject as well. How do you create those beneficial connections so that they truly are beneficial for each party? And that is a design activity as well. It's very important to have those discussions to make sure that those connections actually are beneficial. It's something that has to be revisited over time. It's relatively easy to figure out how to make connections beneficial if both parties are willing to do that. But again, it's a discussion, it's agreements, it's really looking and not just assuming and kind of going on and seeing how things happen, because so many people get disappointed when you do it that way and the agreements aren't clear. So that's a key part to think about. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is what we're doing on a national level. I'm a board member of Permaculture Institute of North America. That's the professional organization for permaculture in North America. It has a diploma program for people who want to become better designers, better educators. And we have a really wonderful program on just gaining every permaculture skill in the book, an apprenticeship program where people master each skill set in all 7 petals of the permaculture flower, which include, if you haven't seen that, the built environment, land and nature stewardship, tools and technology, education and culture, finance, community building. There's tools and skill sets in each one of those areas that you can master to whatever degree. You know, any one of those petals could be a lifetime study, but you know, just so that you feel that you understand it and that you have some experience with it, and that you could actually get something done in that area. There's an apprenticeship program for that. But this organization has continued to evolve, and it's wonderful that it's here. It's why I'm supporting it, because we need that organizational structure on a national level, continental level, to help these regional areas not have to reinvent the wheel. And we can bring regional wisdom into this national body and then communicate it out. We hadn't found a good way to do this, and COVID really kind of galvanized us into creating one, which is this online forum. So we're holding an online summit, a leadership summit for North America in August from the 20th to 23rd. We were going to have it in person, but because of COVID, we're having it online. And that opened up a whole new aspect to it. This summit is not just going to be a bunch of people talking like I'm doing now. It's going to be workshops, and it's going to be meeting working groups, which right now are forming and are meeting before the summit. And this concept of working groups is a very powerful concept for bringing community together and creating more resilience. And you know, I'm talking all on a community level. There's a bunch of stuff you can do on a personal, individual level to be more resilient. And the number one thing is to have your community connections, deepen them, strengthen them, and, you know, have some food supply, have, you know, be just like hurricane prep on an individual level. Just do that and you'll be more resilient. But also, you know, cultivating those community ties is so important. So the Knowledge Convergent Summit Leadership Summit is is an effort to bring people together in a similar way that the civil rights movement pulled together in the 60s. And one of the most successful things that they did was the community leaders, the religious leaders, the community organizers all got together for a summit or convergence in the early 60s and created a strategy. And then they went back to their regions and executed it. And they kept in communication. They stayed in communication. What was successful, what wasn't successful. And they continue to tweak it and use those methods in every town and city across the nation. And that really made a difference. That one point of coordination made so much difference in moving that movement forward. And it's something that we haven't done as permaculture designers because we're having fun in the garden and we're going through our own process on it. But this is the next stage of succession in the ecology of human beings, and the permaculture movement is let's become a forest now. Let's become a forest that has a mycelium network that's in tight communication and is letting the energies flow throughout the forest to benefit the entire system. And this is one way that we're hoping to do it. So this summit that we're having is the first one of a series of them. We're going to continue to have these and build on the previous ones to increase everybody's capacity for leadership, whatever that means. And permaculture definition of leadership is a little bit different than the mainstream definition. Maybe it doesn't mean getting up in front of everybody and telling them what to do. It means being able to facilitate conversations and find the strengths in others and help them manifest them better, and a whole list of things. So these working groups, we have 7 of them right now. They address climate change, economics, and a number of other subjects. I'm heading up the mutual aid one. And already we've just had one meeting, but a lot got done because some people who have been deeply immersed in this subject are showing up at these meetings, and they have resources and ideas, and we're able to learn from each other and compile some meaningful resources for anybody else who wants to ramp up their mutual aid networks in their area or plug the concepts of mutual aid into what they're already doing. We have one on climate change, on water, on regenerative agriculture, deep adaptation, education. So the whole idea is to bring together our resources and combine them to make the system stronger, and to develop ways to share these with the broader group so that more people can benefit more rapidly, and we're all more effective. So I'm excited about that. It's something we can all do on a local level, but bringing together the talent and wisdom and knowledge on a larger level is even better. And this is also happening at an international level, and that's exciting too. But we have specific things in the US that we really need to address, that are unique to the US. So if you want to get involved in that, let me know. Contact me at Koreen@growpermaculture.com. I really urge people to join PINA. It's only $30 a year. You do get a newsletter. You're going to get access to all this awesome material. We're adding more all the time. We're really trying to make that a valuable membership, and the the cost may go up the more valuable we make it, but right now we're trying to just keep it as affordable as possible for everybody, and it really helps us do our work too. We're all volunteers. We have one paid staff. Um, this has been built by volunteers, so if we can pay for our infrastructure at least and not have to pay for that ourselves, that really helps, and that's what the membership does. So I don't think there's anything else right now. I just want to open it up to whatever you're going to do.
Oh, Koreen, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here. Your experience has always been an inspiration to me here in Florida. We're very lucky to have you as a pioneer in resiliency and community. We have a couple questions that came in. Let's see, one is, are there networks to reduce food desert groups to increase farming knowledge in impoverished areas? That was from Madison.
Okay, yes, in St. Pete, there's Sustainable Urban Agriculture Coalition, which is a good model. They are addressing, getting community gardens into food desert areas, and doing some other programs like gleaning. I would really check out the gleaning program in Sarasota. That's been a super successful program to get healthy foods into food desert areas. There's, we're trying to create some education programs right now in South St. Pete through a community center there where people are taught to garden. We've done a lot of that kind of thing, and that it can be done by volunteers, but if you can get funding, it's just going to be able to make it more sustainable, because volunteers get burnt out, and I can attest to that.
Yeah, you've done an amazing job over there in Brooksville. It's like, that's maybe one of the harshest environments in Florida, and it's really great to see you building a thriving community over there. We have another question about how to get involved with the Mutual AIDS Network.
There's usually Facebook groups that you can connect up to. Just search mutual aid Facebook groups. You can also search mutual aid in Google. This is how I found the original mutual aid group that I connected up with in Tampa, and then that linked me into the national one. They have Google Docs that have links to these various networks and how to connect up with them. They're very useful. I did one for Tampa, which anyone can access. It has a lot of national information on it. It's called, and I also have a Slack channel. There's national level Slack channels as well. So you're welcome to email me for more specific information if you want. I can connect you up, or you can find things on your own in your local area. I'm not going to know anything about local except for Tampa.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it's really wonderful to see such an example of building resiliency. And I know your work in Haiti has just been amazing. And can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing, what your current project is, maybe the farm over in Brooksville, and what you're up to?
Yeah, we have a 10-acre farm, and it's a medicinal herb farm with a bunch of fruit trees. And we're building a small community on the farm. We have 5 people here that are doing the work, and really trying to bring some culture to the Brooksville area as well. There's yeah, people are welcome to come and see it. We're taking small groups. We're starting to do some small classes, very limited amounts of people, and we're trying to get some videos online like everybody is doing right now to show more about the farm. But it's called Our Permaculture Farm. We have a nursery that we're selling stuff online on ourpermaculturefarm.com, and then my company is growpermaculture.com, and that's the design and education aspect of what we do.
we are honored and grateful to have you with us today. It's so exciting just to learn from your knowledge. You've been teaching PDCs. I mean, you pretty much started the game here in Florida. So thank you so much for your continual effort. And we're also very grateful for your donation of a 1-hour consult with Koreen, which I highly recommend getting. So in order to win that, simply go over to the Sustainable Kashi community page and answer the following question. What is one thing you can do to help your community become more resilient? And that will all get posted right next in the chat box. Thanks to Amy, which I want to thank Amy for handling all the production of today's show. I know it's been a little bit trickier than our normal one. So thank you for making everything work. That takes a lot. And if you feel like donating to this, there's links that helps us keep going. We're all volunteer based, as Koreen says, and a little bit of financial capital helps it goes a long way in this world. COVID-19 and now the BLM demonstrations has taught me so many things. And most of all, I've learned the value of resiliency and diversity. As I sit here in intentional community, closed from the outside world, I realize how important growing our own food, having our own regenerative energy and our own water, how important that really is, and how being connected to those parts of our lives give us value far greater than dollar bills or most anything else like you can value. I feel secure knowing I'm surrounded in all the food, energy, love, community, card games, movie nights, all these things that a community gives you that's really just unmeasurable. So thank you for joining this community and on such an important topic. And I look forward to seeing you all next week and talking to you in the Facebook community page. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Koreen. And we look forward to seeing you all very soon. Bye.
Hi. Thank you for doing
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Koreen. That was beautiful.
this. You guys are awesome.
You're awesome.
See everybody in the group.
Bye.
Hey, everybody.